All right, welcome to the video as we're discussing now Pep Guardiola's Manchester City and their 2-3-5 or 2-3-2-3 system, which can also turn into a 2-3-5. Okay, but on paper, again, they start in a 4-3-3. So when they transition into their offensive phase of play, you're going to see them switch into this 2-3-2-5, and he's done it for year and a half, 2 years, if not a little bit longer. And it's brought him a lot of success as they've dominated the Premier League or dominated England in general. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through how he does it or how he's done it. And he does have variations of this, by the way, so it's not always using this, but this has been one of his main focuses. Okay, now his is different. Pep's is different than Jurgen Klopp's, and you're going to see why here in a second. And these arrows kind of give you a little bit of an indication, but I'm going to walk you through how it works. So here we go. So the first premise is this. In Klopp's formation, he had a 7 and 11, right, tuck inside. In Pep's system, they do it a little bit differently. They go outside. So if we look at a typical back four, or starting 11, I guess I should say, you'd see Ederson in goal. You would see Walker. You would see Otamendi or Stones. And Laporte, if he's healthy. Left back would be similar to like Mendy or Shevchenko. Delph's played there before when he was at the club, and so on, right? Then you'd have Fernandinho. I'm trying to pick like their top 11 when they're consistently playing, not this year. Then you'd have, for example, you'd have David Silva as the number 10, Kevin De Bruyne as the 8. The right wing would be somebody like Mahrez or Bernardo Silva. The 9 would probably be Aguero, and the left wing would be Sterling. Okay, so Sterling and let's use Bernardo Silva in this scenario are going to stay and pretty much hug the touchline until the very final third. And what I mean by that is if the ball's on the right side here with Bernardo Silva, Sterling's going to come flying inside, which you're going to see here shortly. Okay, but for 2/3 of the field of the build-up, they're going to be on the touchline waiting. And they're going to be the only players in that wide area until a center midfielder moves. So you're going to see it in a second. Right, so the wide players go out. The 8 and 10 are going to go higher, and their main objectives is to attack the half spaces, which you'll see here shortly. Okay, the 6 will drop in, but what you're going to notice now is the 2 and 3 are both going to come inside. Now, typically what they do in Pep's system is they go a little bit higher than the defensive midfielder. So they don't want to be on the same line, like if the 2 would be here if it's the same line. They're usually going to be higher. Now, it could be reversed. The 6 could be a little bit higher and the 2 could drop, or the 3. But this way they have those little triangles to play through. So whether it's here, whether it's here, whether it's here, here, right? You can see all these triangles that they're now able to use. Okay, but they're inverted fullbacks, so the 2 and 3 come inside in the build-up phase and play as defensive midfielders. So the 3 would be like the left side, the 2 would be the right side, and then you have your 6, the center defensive midfielder. Okay, and they'll step in like that. Now, this is really important, and it's essentially the opposite of Klopp's system. What I mean by that is because he keeps the 7 and 11 wide, right? The back 4 of the opponent, which you can see here in red, is now going to stretch because there's only 3 players. But they need to be able to mark all 3 because if the ball's in the middle, they need to be able to have awareness of the player, right? And the position of the player. So you're going to see, for example, the 2 slide out and the 3 slide out. What this does, it allows the half spaces to be open. The half space, as I've mentioned before, is the space between the center back, say the 5, and then the number 3. So it's a space between them that Pep does a great job of exploiting. And he does it the same thing on the other side, right? Between the 4 and the 2. Okay? So now you're going to see they stretch, and those half spaces become really big. So in this scenario now I'm going to show you. The inverted fullback has possession, and he's able to play wide to the winger who receives. The defender's now coming to pressure, and Kevin De Bruyne usually will make a run into that pocket, into that half space. So you can see he's already moving. Now the ball's played into him, and it's really dangerous here, which means now the 5 has to come over to cover. Right, but you can see here, they're getting at least 3 runners into the box. Aguero, David Silva, and Sterling are crashing. Right, and you'd probably see if this layoff happens like this, he's probably going to overlap inside to get into the box. So that you get 3, 4, 5 numbers sometimes into the box, depending on how the system worked out in that scenario. Okay, so you can see it here again, right? So we're going to keep continuing this. I'm not moving the defenders just so you can see this, but they're getting numbers into the box to get the shot off. Okay, now I'm bringing it back for you because what I want to do is show you with the opponent in, right? The full team, okay? So they're going to come back in. I'm going to add the defenders. So here they are. Okay, now what Man City does a really good job of doing is inviting pressure. So in the possession part, I gave you a phrase from Pep when I was just explaining the possession principles. And I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly what it is at the top of my head, but it's, we don't move the ball to move the ball. We move the ball to move the opponent. So you'll see a lot of times they'll do this. They'll make what you would maybe consider a risky pass. Whereas, for example, he might play to Fernandinho here from, let's say it's Otamendi, he'll play Fernandinho. Right, and then Fernandinho has no option but to play negative. And he'll play another pass that will try and trigger the defensive trap. So I'm going to freeze this and bring it back for a second. I'm going to start it from here. So here's where I add the players. The ball is going to reset, and you're going to see this. Okay, so watch. Really interesting because Pep's team do a great job of initiating the opposing team to press. Okay, so I'm going to add the defenders now so you can see it. The opposing team is set up in a 4-3-3, and they're trying to press with 3. Okay? Pep's team will have the ball, and sometimes teams won't pressure the center backs or the goalkeeper. They'll let them have it. But the second they try and play into the defensive midfielder or the inverted fullbacks, they try and jump the ball. Right? So the ball goes into Fernandinho. Fernandinho has pressure. They're attracting the pressure to get the opposing team to bite. Right? And now spaces are going to start opening up, especially in wide areas because they're playing so narrow. Right? Which will allow David Silva and Kevin De Bruyne to exploit these spaces. Okay? The ball would go back to Otamendi. They don't win the high press. And now the gap's now available for Kevin to receive in this pocket here in the wide area, and he's going to have a lot of space to attack. Because what happens is if the front 3 pressures, they cannot go alone. Because think about it. Let's say the midfield players stayed back and the front 3 went to pressure. It would be 5v3. Very rarely is the opposition going to win the ball back if it's 5v3. So they have to commit numbers forward, and this is a full press by the entire team to try and win the ball back. But the problem is the center midfielders have to step up, which means they're going to have to cover the 2, the inverted fullback, and the 3, the other inverted fullback. The 6 is going to have to try and screen the 8 or the 10. Right? But if they move to the outside areas, the defensive midfielder doesn't want to go into those spaces. So then it becomes a big mismatch and a miscommunication. The ball can now come wide to De Bruyne. He can receive and then make a decision. So you can see here now, if they get the ball wide here, they now have 5 running forward versus 4. And this is what Man City has done a great job of creating, is these overloads like this. And then, for example, maybe he plays it into Aguero and then he attacks the half space. Or he plays it wide to Bernardo Silva and then attacks the half space. And these scenarios happen all the time. And it really creates mayhem for the opposition because they don't know how to handle it. When Man City does a great job, or when they're able to do it and attract the opposing team to pressure, they're moving defenders to create scenarios that they can play from, which is what they want. And then you can see they're using the 5-and-5 system with the 4-5-6-3-2 staying as more defensive positions to counter the counterattack. And then you have the 8, 7, 9, 10, and 11 being that offensive threat, because once they break this line, they can go and cause serious damage to the opponent. And this is why over the last 2.5 years, give or take, Pep has dominated, and Manchester City has dominated English football. Okay, by winning and winning and winning and winning and setting records because of the way they play. And this is a very principal method that they use that has caused havoc against the opponents. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.